Alright. I figured out what was going wrong with my microphone. It was some weird Discord thing. I forgot to increase the amount of RAM to the game again. I'm gonna change the amount of render distance though to 8 because that's what the game wants me to. And I will use ZGC next time. Anyways, where were we? Oh yes. The zombie attack. Ooh, free iron. Today my dad kinda yelled at me. We were going to a Canada Day dinner, and he said, "Oh, get ready in 15 minutes." I had just started a game that I couldn't quit. And I was like, "Oh, I'll play this 15 minutes and then I'll quit." I made a promise to some friends and stuff. Yeah, I so I forgot about the 15 minutes. I was like, "Oh, he'll remind me when 15 minutes is up." Right? And so I'm playing my game, and then, I don't know, about 15 minutes later, I get friggin' yelled at, say, "Turn off the game, go upstairs right now." I think there's probably a stream audio there or something. And I'm like, "Yo, I was prepared for you to tell me." And he was like, "Oh, I already told you 2 times and you didn't hear me." Now, this is where it comes into effect. Communication is a very important skill. Whether that be relationships or your job application, communication is a very, very important skill, right? For getting a job and stuff, it's important. For dating people, it's important. If you don't know how to communicate, oftentimes things aren't going to go right for you, right? How? And what me and my dad failed to do is, I could have said, "Oh, can you make sure to remind me when that happens?" That would have been a good way for me to ensure that there isn't a miscommunication. And he could have said, "Oh, Tyler, you didn't hear me the first 2 times, and we need to go now," instead of absolutely just blowing his top at me. The problem where I find it's unsuitable to just yell at me like that is he's a little bit hard of hearing, right? I have all of these. There's a lot of times where I say something and he doesn't hear it, right? And when I get mad at him for not hearing me, he gives me a little bit of flack about this. So when I'm locked in on a video game and I'm like friggin' in the thick of it, you know, you can't really get explosively mad at me for not being able to hear you, because you expect the same thing from me. We can't have double standards, you know? Double standards are a very sort of hypocritical thing to have, right? Now, a proper communication is a really important thing. When I'm talking to other people, I always like to force myself to think about, what am I saying to this person? Am I going to offend them? Are they going to be hurt by the things I'm saying? With my previous relationship, I didn't think about that much, and that didn't end very well for me, right? So when talking to a person, break it down into steps. Is what I'm saying going to immediately hurt the person? Is it going to be so offensive that they just get up, maybe slap me across the face, say, "You're a horrible person, Tyler Peters," and then dip? If so, rethink what you're going to talk about there. If not, continue on to step 2. Will what I'm saying be taken in a good or bad way? When you're talking to people, unless you can 100% know, which is quite frankly never, that something is going to hurt their feelings, don't say it. Don't say, "Oh, dude, I think you're friggin' fat, yo." Not even if it's to your homie. Like, if you say, if I went up to my friend and said, "Oh, hey, Tom, yo, you're really friggin' fat." Do you think they would appreciate that? I mean, they might laugh at the point and say, "Ha, you too, buddy." But everything, you never know what somebody's going through, right? You can never really say, "I know 100% of how this will impact them," right? So that's why you need to take a lot of caution when you're going through this, right? Caution is important. So when communicating, always think over what you're saying. The most important is this going to immediately offend them? If not, is this going to offend them, but in a way they won't show it to you? And then you can think, how will this conversation affect our futures? Right? You can say, we're exchanging data here. That's the point of talking with each other. We're exchanging data here. How will this... What do I need to remember about this data, and what do I need to know about this data? So if your friend is telling you an important date, like my dad to me, should I write this date down? Should I file it away in a calendar? If so, do that. Don't forget about that, because a conversation is typically the most important thing happening in a moment, right? So file it away in like in a binder or something. And then if not, try to extract data from them. Say or tell them about data that you have yourself. Conversation is about the exchanging of data. If you're talking to a person you want to date, say, talk about yourself. Talk about things you find interesting. Talk about the day. Conversation is here, let me make a sign. Damn, my game is lagging for some reason. Okay. So, conversation is 1. Conversation is a means of sharing data, right? Right? If I'm just walking down the street and I see, "Oh, hey, Tom, the birch tree. Yeah, I'm gonna have..." Sorry for the voice crack. "Yeah, I'm gonna have lunch there tomorrow. What about you?" That's exchanging data. Okay? So that is surface level of a conversation. Just the plain words you're saying and what you want the other person to know. And conversations are also a way of sharing emotions. Because I'm gonna be straightforward with you here now. You're never gonna find a conversation that doesn't have context to it, right? So your conversation's always gonna have a subtext. Because you might have small talk on the bus or something, but that small talk's always going to be prompted by something, right? You might see a person on the bus who looks rather interesting to you, like an old man that might have a story, or a person who looks a bit down in the day. Everything is always going to have context, and you need to be able to see the emotional providence of that context within your conversation, right? Along with this, um, conversations are meant to be remembered, right? When I think of as I was saying last episode, when I think of expanding my mind in a intellectual manner, I often I often go to conversations, correct? I a an amazing way to get smarter is to talk to people smarter than you. Like, I don't like to admit this, but there are, because I'm a very egotistical maniac, but there are so many people who are smarter than you in this world. There are people smarter than me, smarter than you, smarter than freaking Albert Einstein. They don't, there's a very, very high probability that you will never be the smartest person in a room, right? I mean, in a room with 1,000 people. And that's something you just have to take at its surface value. Although you can't be the smartest person in a room, you can always make yourself smarter by talking to the smartest person in the room, right? That's I'm subscribed to this weekly email, Dr. Justin and Eye Candy. Amazing reads. But he talks about uh quite brilliant ways to learn, and one that always comes up is debating things with other people. Now, debating things with other people, a large part of that is your conversations and your context, right? Because you can't debate without talking to somebody. Conversations and context allow the exchange of information and in turn ideas, right? If you're talking to somebody, you're going to be exchanging ideas and emotions. Right? Intellectual conversations, shift them more towards ideas. If you're debating something quite fervently, don't include your emotions, right? I want you to always think towards the conversation with a thinking mind rather than a emotional mind, because I see a lot of people these days, they forget about their emotional mind, especially in terms of politics. W cross, especially when I think of people. For example, I'm very biased on this, but I believe that a large majority of, I'll say this, the modern Republican American are rather uneducated on hearing out the other side of somebody's conversation, right? You can disprove this to me if you'd like. You can message me this or something in the comments or what have you. But I have this personal belief that a strong number of people who are outwardly conservative, especially this being in social media, which they're probably bots. But the people who are outwardly conservative in my school, they're amazing people. I respect them, and they are quite intellectual. But the majority of conservative people I see just out on the streets compared to more leftist, liberal things, they seem vastly more orientated on their emotions. And I respect all political views, but I don't respect people who can't drive a conversation based off of intellectual thoughts, right? You can have your emotional conversations with somebody you're comfortable with having an emotional conversation, but random people on the street, don't have an emotional conversation with them. Be intellectual. And if the other person isn't intellectual, be intellectual for them. Right? Conversation is meant as a way of sharing data, not as sharing emotions. Now, I will give you some points where emotional conversation is okay. When you're in a specific place, let's say a bar. Bars are for socializing, right? If you're going out to a bar and you're not going there to socialize with people, well, what are you going out for, man? Bars are for socializing. You can talk emotionally there. You can say, "Oh, I'm super depressed. My wife Linda left me." And you can have all of these emotional conversations with the guy right next to you. You can also have intellectual conversations. There's no place that you can never have intellectual conversations in, right? But it's always important to keep in mind, even if you're intoxicated, that people's emotions matter, right? You can't just go around being mean to people, offending them. Why do these skeletons have such good aim? I'm not gonna go here. But when you're talking to somebody that you don't, even if you don't respect them, you have to keep in mind that people have emotions, and sometimes saying just the intellectual thing isn't gonna make either of your lives improved, right? It isn't gonna improve either of your mental states, and sometimes it isn't gonna, saying something that's smart or witty isn't gonna improve either of your thinking abilities, right? When talking to people, it is important to think about the context, as I said, and how that affects what type of conversation this will be. Intellectual or emotional. Now, I myself, as I've said, I prefer to have less emotional conversation and more intellectual conversation. But if you're with a partner, go wham on the emotional conversation, right? That's a big mistake that I made. Don't need to bring that up again. Yeah. Conversation is important. It always will be. Nothing can change that. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.